Impact Ministries. Everyone, please silence your phone, and if you so choose, please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow our heads. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our life, our health, and our strength. Father, we just thank you for this gathering on today. We thank you for our mayor and our city officials. We thank you for what you are doing in this great city and everything that you're getting ready to do. We ask you to be with us, be with our mayor, be with our city officials, help them to operate on one accord, and help them to walk in wisdom, to make these decisions that many don't want to make, but give them the wisdom and the know-how and the knowledge to make the right decision. Give them the wisdom to listen when it's time to listen, and the wisdom to speak when it's time to speak, and the courage to speak and stand up when it's time to stand up. Father, we just thank you for everything that you are doing and everything that you're getting ready to do. God, we ask you to just continue to bless this great city and help us to be on one accord. Help us to walk together in unity, no matter what walks of life we come from, no matter what ethnicity we are. God, we just ask you to just help us to walk on one accord and be in unity. And Father, we just thank you and we praise you for all these things in your Son Jesus' name. Can we all say amen?
Pledge allegiance. Are you? May I have roll call, please?
Mayor West.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Turner. Present. Councilmember Durio.
Present.
Councilmember Getz.
Present.
Councilmember Felshaw.
Present.
Councilmember Samuel.
Here.
And Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, so today we have one presentation, Mr. Eddie Solis with Hillco Partners, who will give an update on the 88th Legislature.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. We had a visit in February at the outset of the session. Had a good visit from some of the folks here in Austin. I think we did some good work there. And then I came back by to visit again in May. So this is kind of a follow-up to those discussions, what happened, what didn't happen, and how we could proceed. As I mentioned at the outset, one of the blessings or challenges that the legislature was going to have is an unprecedented surplus, and it was beneficial on the whole. A lot of items were funded. We talked in February how probably one of the issues was going to be addressing or dealing with a spending limit, and so what you will see in November. And I'll talk about a few of the items, but what you'll see in November are propositions on November 7th for the voters in Texas to approve for some funding. And this is going to include water infrastructure, it'll include grid infrastructure, teacher COLA, cost of living adjustment, parks. So this funding that has been set aside for those particular projects will have to be approved in November. Now, the budget, which turned out to be a $321 billion budget, includes those costs because the comptroller assumes that those propositions are going to be passed. And I think history serves that propositions do pretty well historically. But along that, one that I will talk about later, a big one was property tax relief as well. So when the legislature came in, they were identifying and had identified some issues that they were going to be addressing amongst the general issues that they address every session, including school safety, property tax relief, the electric grid. After Uri, that was certainly a valuable discussion, water infrastructure, and as I mentioned, rural broadband. I was very appreciative to the work that Mr. Williams and his team, and of course the council, did on that legislative agenda that I believe you all have today. What I'll do is I'll try to track some of those areas of priority and what happened in those areas or what didn't happen. The number one priority was the qualified hotel project. And I'm very glad and happy to say that it was successful. So that bill passed. As I mentioned in either preparation in February or in reality in May, as I suspected, and we've been a part of these efforts, each bill starts out an individual standalone bill and typically goes into a comprehensive bill with other projects. And indeed, we did. House Bill 5012 was passed, and we are included in that as well as several other communities. I will have to say that one difference in this particular batch, if you will, of qualified hotel projects is that this particular provision, which will impact our project and any project alongside us throughout the state, is the bill includes a clawback provision. And it sounds a bit startling, but it really shouldn't be. It's a way for the state to get money back in the event that the project that was being proposed didn't meet its expectations. The expectations are not very aggressive. They're very conservative. And in working with this legislation and previously, the hotel and lodging folks are very supportive. They were of our group and our effort and other efforts as well. Helped me understand that the payback period is usually about 5 or 6 years. And so I suspect that A, going into the project, we know that, and B, that it won't be that onerous. The value of having this right to what they call entitlements to this hot tax and sales tax is very valuable for a project. So I'm very confident that we're going to be just fine as other projects. As anyone goes into this knowing eyes wide open, I think it's going to be valuable to keep that in mind, and I think we're going to be just fine. And I've got to reiterate, the communities we've worked with that have started a lot of very advantageous projects with a qualified hotel project kind of being the anchor has been really valuable. It's been very valuable to the community. It's been very valuable to recruiting tourism and various events that bring prosperity and economic development to the community. So something comes up and y'all don't want to do it, you don't have to. There's no requirement, but it has been a valuable component and tool for various communities. The other big piece of legislation that we talked about when I was here last in May was what the legislature referred to as field preemption. There was a preemption bill, House Bill 2127, that establishes a set of codes, about 4 codes, that states and makes clear that a city's ordinances in the direction of those particular codes are preempted by state law. Now, this was an overwhelmingly supported bill. The business side referred to it as the Regulatory Consistency Act. One of the discussions that went on with this bill was that different communities had different ordinances, and there was an inconsistency. That was their position from my recollection. The difficult part, I think, is going to be identifying where this bill triggers which ordinances. And I think that there's discussion to continue. I was mentioning to Ms. Reed, there is litigation. Houston and San Antonio have presented, I believe it is a ruling on summary judgment, if that's right. That hearing was supposed to be last week. It was moved and rescheduled to the 30th of August. While that was going on, there were a handful of cities that submitted an amicus brief to the court about their own read of this. And along with the city of Arlington, Denton, Plano, and Waco submitted that document or that measure to the courts. So a lot of discussion to go. The bill is not effective until September 1st. So Houston's effort seemed to have been to try to get this to this point of summary judgment prior to its effective date. Now that particular preliminary date has been moved to August 30th, so more to come. I wish I could answer more on the legal side, but there's a lot of discussion as to the constitutionality and various issues that have been brought up by the passage of this legislation. As we go forward, one of the larger discussions and valuable discussions this session took 2 additional special sessions, and that was the property tax relief. As I mentioned, this is going to be a proposition that you'll see in November. It'll bring, and generally speaking, it's an $18 billion property tax relief. It brings the homestead exemption from $40,000 to $100,000 to a homeowner. It does bring in what is referred to as rate compression for school districts. So it sends more state money to school districts so they can compress their property tax rate. And it establishes a 20% property tax cap for a property that is a non-resident property, no more than $5 million in value. I think that's where small businesses are being able to take it, look into that as a valuable environment where a property appraisal cannot go beyond 20% if you are valued under $5 million, a non-homestead exemption. With that being said, that particular provision is a 3-year provision, so it'll obviously be revisited, but I presume that your constituents and maybe you all will have an experience with this as it goes forward. Again, this is to be on the ballot in November, and it's in a grouping of about 14 constitutional amendments that we'll see in November. Continuing with the economic development area that is valuable to every community. Some of you all may be familiar with what was referred to as the 313 program. And this was a school district economic development tool that allowed for a minimization of property value for a 10-year period. Last session, well now the previous session, that particular program was not reauthorized. So the state went about 1.5 years without a program. This session, businesses and communities certainly put forward the opinion that that was a valuable tool. I looked up the comptroller's website with the projects, and I believe Beaumont School District has about 12. And so those are very valuable, although they may not impact the city budget. They certainly have an impact on business and economic recruiting economic development. So HB 5 that I've been referring to is the new program, and it establishes the Texas Jobs, Energy, Technology, and Innovation Act. And I think it's being considered or referred to as the JEDI Act. And so we'll move forward with a new program. It changes a lot of things. It is a very departure from the quote-unquote 313 program. This particular bill still allows for property tax relief for school districts from the school district property tax value. What's interesting about this particular program now, it takes into account and has a little further advantage with opportunity zones, which, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 identified by the Treasury here in Beaumont. So that'll be something new. That'll be something that communities that have those designations will have a little further advantage. The previous program and this program require a competitive site selection. So if it's a company that's trying to come into Beaumont, the comptroller's office and the governor's office want to make clear that there is another offer somewhere else in another state, not Texas. And so that's a value. It's the governor's office as the economic development office at the governor's office are amazing ambassadors for recruiting business. The old program, you might remember Samsung and Taylor, Tesla and Del Valle, those were tools that were utilized. This program's a little different, but in spirit, it attempts to do a similar thing. We probably talked a little bit about this, but what was not successful was gaming legislation. There were two varied proposals. One was casino gambling, and the other was online gaming, neither of which were successful. There was in the area of city finance, I think there was a clarification effort, and again, this was something that I stayed close to the hotel and lodging folks on a revamping, if you will, of the hotel occupancy tax. And so a particular piece of legislation tried to streamline and clean up. I don't think it had anything egregious or hurtful, but it does require a little bit more reporting and a little more clarification on what those hot taxes are used for. I know you all are having a discussion like that this evening. I'm not sure whether the project you all are talking to would apply to this, but we can certainly figure and find that out. There was a clarification. The finance folks would find this certainly interesting and did, I'm sure, on certificates of obligation, which clarified what those particular vehicles could be used for, to try to, and it tapered it off a little. It brought a little more structure to certificates of obligation and what a public project is defined as. In the way,
Mr. Solis, one question on
yes,
that.
of course.
Am I correct in understanding that one of the changes that they made with certificates of obligation is that they could not be used to finance hotels?
Yes, and sporting stadiums. Well, and let me say, Councilmember, that's with some qualifiers. If you take a look at the legislation, it says that it lays out that they could be if there is a predominant use by the public entity. And there's something that the comptroller's office uses to identify that in the use of a structure or a facility that is going to take advantage of these types of benefits as a public entity. So when you take a look at that bill, it establishes that if it's 50% utilized by the public jurisdiction and establishes that if it is truly a public project or a public facility, they can be used. So it's kind of a yes and no. But, that means that if somebody's going to put together some type of event center or something, there has to be a preponderance of use for the public entity.
So looking at what we're trying to do here in Beaumont with regard to bringing in the downtown hotel and rebranding the Civic Center as a convention center, obviously that will be a public entity there, I would think. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The qualified hotel project will stand alone and will have its own ability for that revenue. Going forward, this is something that is going to have to be contemplated, and this is just for CO bonds. Doesn't mean other types of vehicles can't be used. So,
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question.
And we'll hold rest of the questions till the end of the presentation, if that's okay.
Certainly, ma'am. Thank you. Public safety and public health, a very, very generous appropriation for safety and security to the Department of Criminal Justice. Councilmember Samuels, when I first was here in February, you brought up mental health, and it has stayed in my mind. This legislature appropriated $3 billion for that benefit, and it is going to very likely go a good ways for those types of behavioral health services. There is an appropriation for rural hospitals. School safety, of course, was a large investment from the city. There were unfortunately some tragic incidents that have happened that brought certainly light to that. There was an appropriation for rural law enforcement. 18 million, which is still a very good pot of money for opioid prevention and overdose prevention, catching the attention of lawmakers with regard to that particular unfortunate environment. The Flood Infrastructure Fund picked up another over $600 million, which is valuable with regard to resiliency and what the city of Beaumont, like others, has to deal with when certain weather events are coming forward. I'm from South Texas. I was telling Miles I'm keeping an eye on my mother. She's in Kingsville. Harold just went through there. Everything's okay, but it's just hadn't rained in so long that there's probably going to be a fair amount. But I think that's just an example of an unpredictable event that might happen, and so that money will certainly go a far way. The EDAP program, the Economically Distressed Area Program for water funding, I'm not sure how it affects Beaumont in particular, but I suspect it may further out in the county. And of course, the $5 billion that was set aside, there will be a proposition in November for the electric support for generators or to take advantage of funding from the state to build more generation of electrical resources. Transportation and infrastructure, I think there was a very valuable appropriation for the port capital improvement projects, $200 million, and another $400 million for the ship channel improvement revolving fund. I think those will be valuable should they need to be accessed. Water infrastructure was a big issue and discussion this time around. You will see a constitutional amendment to vote on that will take $1 billion to what is being established as the Texas Water Fund for various water projects. There's one thing that I know was in our legislative agenda, and it has to do with what many communities are dealing with regarding water loss. This will obviously go towards that direction, but I feel that the legislators who are identifying the value, increasing value of this resource will continue to focus on water loss for the citizens of a community. Broadband infrastructure, $1 billion is being set aside, $1.5 billion for that, expanding the broadband in this state. That again will be in a proposition in November. Will need to be approved by the voters of Texas. From the perspective of tourism, parks, and natural resources, tourism received what the hotel and lodging folks were referring to as full funding. There was over $125 million funded in that direction to recruit and to bolster up tourism. Also, $1 billion set aside in the event that the voters approve the Centennial Park Preservation Fund, and this would send money to state parks in our state. I mentioned 2127 in the way of planning and development. There's still a lot of discussion going forward on annexation, on various types of districts, special districts, for the discussion of identifying how certain communities are handling these special districts. I think there's just a very keen focus on the operation of some of these areas. They are taxing entities, so they have a decent amount of responsibility, and certainly the legislature watches over that. The permitting process again continues to be fine-tuned by the legislature. Now has created a third-party review if a permitting process takes over a certain amount of time. I'm bringing it to a close and leave time for the Q&A, Mayor. Any Q&A. There will be more special sessions, one for sure, likely to be in October. The legislature is still wanting to and intending to deal with school choice. Some will refer to that as vouchers. There'll be a lot of discussion about public education. They will likely also take up teacher pay raise in that same discussion. As you all know, a special session can only be called by the governor. Can only last 30 days, but he or she can call as many as he or she would like, and only the governor can place an item on the call, as we say. There were some bills that the governor vetoed and established, and it says this in the veto proclamation, that certain issues needed to be dealt with before they carried forward with those particular bills. So chances are any of those vetoed bills may come back up now that they've taken care of property tax and when they take care of school choice. So with that, again, just reminding you all and the citizens here that November 7th will be a constitutional amendment election, and there are quite a few proposals there that can benefit the state and certainly communities.
Thank you. Councilman Turner?
Yes, sir. I wanted you to get a little bit more in detail about the homestead exemption. We kind of went over it. You kind of gave some minor things, but can you get a little bit more in detail about it? There's been a huge concern in the community of Beaumont, which is my concern, about the comptroller coming down and raising all the values, not only on the homesteads, but also heard you say it was a 20% property tax for the small business owners. I just want a 20% cap. I just want you to give a little bit more details about those two, because there was a big issue in the city of Beaumont when we went up on all those. The comptroller came down and went up on everything.
Well, the property value study is what the comptroller's office is responsible for, if I get that label correct. And you're right, there is local property value. This is primarily with the school districts identified in a value increase. And in the instant, let's please keep in mind, Councilmember Turner, this is in the spirit of property tax relief. So to take your first point, and I don't have too much more specifics other than currently a homeowner has a 40, due to previous legislation, a 40% tax homestead exemption for their homestead. That is going to be increased to 100,000 should we pass, should the voters pass that in November. With regard to the 5 million, the House and the Senate had proposals. That's one of the reasons why they still needed to work it out and had a couple of special sessions. The House was proposing a property cap. It morphed into this particular proposal. Now, it is a property tax cap, keeping the appraisal from going over 20% at the $5 million level for a non-homestead piece of property. And so I've never done what you and your colleagues are doing. I've never run a city. I've never done anything in that direction. But so I can't lend myself to exactly how far that will go to a city's budget. But it's certainly a measure that is valuable to the homeowner or property owner, but certainly has taxing entities that need to accommodate what that will bring. So I know that didn't completely answer your question, but I understand that there are questions and thoughts about how will this turn out and what will that mean with the property value study when the comptroller's office.
Sorry. My concern was just to look at it from the city's aspect. What happens at the state level definitely can affect us drastically at the local level. What may seem like a discount at the state level may cause us to have some issues down the line as a city. So I just wanted to be mindful of that up front. And I also heard you say $125 million to recruit tourism. And I heard you say $1 billion could possibly be set to the side for Centennial State Parks. I just wanted to say, if it's going to be set to the side, we want some of that. So.
It'll be a similar environment or a competitive environment, but yes, sir. Tourism typically is funded. In this case, it was a little higher than normal. Again, going back to one of my first points about the surplus that the state was experiencing, and the Centennial Preservation the Centennial Park Preservation Fund is what will be established to take advantage of should that proposition be approved. So it will be for all to take.
Okay, yes, sir. And thank you, Roy. And lastly, we talking about tourism later on today and distributing funding for it. So it's kind of right on the money with the conversation today. So thank you for coming down.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Any other questions?
I can help answer some of Councilman Turner's questions about property tax relief. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. So the $100,000 exemption for the homesteads, that only applies to the school district taxing entity. So that won't affect the city of Beaumont. And then on the homestead part, everyone has a 10% cap on how much their taxable value can go up. The appraised value can go up whatever percentage. But if you have a homestead, your taxable value can only increase 10%. Now, what he's talking to on the 20% cap, if there's not a homestead exemption, then there was no cap on how much appraised values or taxable values could increase. But with the $5 million threshold, they're capping that at 20% for taxable purposes. I couldn't imagine there'd be a lot of properties increasing more than 20% in 1 year. So we don't expect this to really affect the city of Beaumont too much. I mean, there might be some properties that go up more than 20%, but I wouldn't imagine it's going to be a lot.
Councilman Turner.
Yeah, the reason it came about because the business community kind of contacted me in an uproar with the most recent incident that happened with the comp trailer and the rates. Some of them, the values went up so high and they're still fighting it that some of their businesses are no longer profitable because what they originally had it set at, it was way more once the comptroller came down and reigned. And I wanted them to understand it's not the city of Beaumont doing it, but it's a lot of confusion when it comes to that. So I'm glad you kind of spoke to it, but it'd be good to speak a little bit more to it so the business owners can understand, the ones who don't, that the city didn't do that and how it came about with the comptroller's office.
Right, and like he said earlier, this was meant as property tax relief for them, not an extra burden.
Mayor.
Councilman Felshaw.
And to speak to that, Councilman Turner, I was in a meeting a couple of years ago. I think Councilman Getz was there. I don't think you were able to attend, where the district appraisal came in to give us a report. And they said, we've been warning y'all for 15 years that we needed to raise our property values, but we've held off. We just didn't want to do it. So finally, the state stepped in and forced us and brought it up and trying to catch us up to where we should be with the rest of the state. So you're right. The city didn't do that. Even the district, the appraisal district didn't do that. The state did that. But that's because for 15, 16 years, we refused to raise our property values. And it's a lesson for us as a community. We probably should be raising our property values slowly over time so that we don't get this hard hit every 15 years from the state of Texas. So part of that fell on us, that we just did not want to raise our property values. And Todd, if I misunderstood that, please correct me, but that was my understanding in the meeting that I attended here a couple of years ago.
That's correct.
Just to clarify one thing, Councilman Philshaw, the city council has nothing to do with the valuation that the appraisal district sets.
No. I'm just saying as a community, as people, we should do this in increments as opposed to one big hit. No, the city has nothing to do with that.
Mayor, if I may, just
City Manager, yes, sir.
two clarifying things. Eddie, thanks for coming down. The preemption bill, could you expound a little bit on what that covers? I know it might be a little difficult, but on that one, and then you mentioned the ship channels getting to money. Did you mean ship ports or just the Houston ship channel?
The ship channel program that
Okay.
the TxDOT is responsible for will have some appropriations. There are four, and you'll have to forgive me, Mr. Williams, I can't remember, it's public health and a couple other,
I'm sorry.
no, my apologies, I should have had that with me. That 2127, the preemption bill we're talking to, speaks of specifically. But as that even exists, I think the curiosity is what ordinances exist today that will trip those wires? And I don't know the full scope of the ordinances here in Beaumont. I hope that it's not any, just for the sake of continuity and tending to your constituents as they expect you to. But something, I think Houston identified something very quickly. Cities have been having some headwinds at the legislature for a while, and I think there are good reason in some instances and not in others. It's my personal opinion. But I will certainly get clearer with you what those are, Mr. Williams, and as the litigation goes forward.
Okay, we can get with it. I think Chris wants to add something.
Yeah, if I could just echo a little bit of what Mr. Solis was saying. Houston cited the following categories of laws as issues: agriculture, business and commerce, finance, insurance, labor, natural resources, occupations, and properties. And as Mr. Solis pointed out, we're still trying to navigate what that means or what are the implications for local codes. But the gist of it is if there's a conflict, the state would preempt the local. And one other thing I would like to mention is that Mr. Solis also touched on HB 3167, which the idea is to try to accelerate permit review, subdivision review. And we realize that that can be an issue, especially in larger cities, less so in Beaumont. But one thing I should point out is because the bill requires very specific time limits, it is going to limit the city and the staff's ability to work with applicants. So it may end up having the opposite effect of what it was, originally intended. So in other words, where if somebody applies for something and we say, well, we need more information or we need some changes, can you please resubmit? Instead of working with that applicant, we're going to actually have to deny permits, and then they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So again, we're still working through these issues.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
For those that were here for the presentation and would like to leave, now is the time to do so. Thank you all for coming. And now is the time for any citizen who wishes to speak. You may make public comments on the consent agenda and agenda items 1 through 3. You may also speak on a matter of public concern, but I'm going to remind you that you're only permitted to speak once. So we're having public concern matters at the beginning and the end of council currently. We're no longer accepting green sheets, so the kiosk at the back was where you were to sign in, and we limit your time to 3 minutes. The green light will come on when you walk up to the podium. The red light will come on when your time is up. And Tina?
Jerome Alexander, public comments.
How y'all doing? Councilman, I come in today, I got a complaint against the guy named is Darion Simpson. He's a Beaumont Police Department narcotic agent, investigator, whatever he is. But he constantly comes in my community and harasses us. And I'm just gonna be real with you. My son the other day, my son was on his way to football practice. So he seen my son leave the house, so he got in behind him, okay? So by the time they got to Ashley and MLK, my son called me on the phone. He said the officer didn't put the lights on me. So by the time he got in the middle of the lane, MLK and Ashley, by the time I got there, they had him in the middle of the lane. So when I got there, I parked over at the furniture store. And I asked him, I said, what you pulling him over for? They won't tell me. So they told him to pull over there to the ass just with the search his car. He said, I'm on my way to football practice. What you pulling me over for? So all in all, it come about, they pulled him over, but at the end, they lied and said that he had tinted windows. But they pulled him over. They called the K9s. They called all the police officers that was SWAT team. They didn't have no body cameras on. They didn't have no name tag. They didn't want to give me their names until me and Groove started asking, they seen they was being video. I released the video on social media where y'all could see it. You probably seen it because it's on my radio station. But the guy, he constantly come harasses us. If you see me one time I done something wrong, that don't mean you see me again, you falsify a ticket to pull me over to search my car. If you see in the video, he searched the car, then he brought the dogs. The dogs searched the car. They pulled the dog away, didn't find nothing, come back. You come back and search the car again. You see, he constantly do this, and we don't bother nobody, man. I come to y'all in peace to ask y'all, tell them to leave us alone, man. We're not scared of the police. We don't bother the police, and we respect the police, but leave us alone. It's all I'm asking. Leave my family alone, man. It's all I'm asking y'all, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Albert Harrison, public comments.
Mayor, City Council, other city employees, and concerned citizens. My comments are basically follow-ups to Mr. Alexander's comments. And the reason I have comments on this particular issue is because 2 of the children that was in that car took a picture with you, Mayor, at Magnolia Park. The same 2 children. One of these children, in my opinion, is very traumatized because of this particular issue. Right now, he even is scared of dogs now. He wasn't, but now he is. Because when the dog came out and started barking, he didn't know what to do. So he's really traumatized. At one time, he had aspiration to be a police officer. Now he has rejected that. He doesn't want to be a police officer now. The police are going to act the way they did on Thursday afternoon. That's where they were going. As you saw yourself, Mayor, I had children at Magnolia Park. Some of the same children were with the same guy going to football practice. And that's why I was called to come to that particular scene. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I have, Mayor. Excuse me, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to proceed with the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion? Councilman Getz?
With regard to item B, we ordered a system for storage and it wasn't the appropriate system, or what? Can you explain what happened there a little bit better?
So when we originally spec'd it out with the vendor, it was when we were getting ready for budget. When they notified us at the beginning of the fiscal year that system was no longer going to be sold, we were going with Axon, and we didn't see any need to purchase the system at that time because we were going to migrate all of the content that's currently being stored locally to Axon. Once we got into the Axon project and we were told that it'll be 2 years before we can do that migration, and the current system started having problems, we knew we were going to have to purchase a new system, use it for 2 years for WatchGuard, and then we'll reappropriate it to a different location to be used for other things. We ended up with a relatively quick turnaround of having to find a new piece of equipment that would work for us within what was budgeted. And the person that did our initial evaluation no longer worked for the company. So they were using what notes they had of his conversations with us, and we did a quick turnaround. And there was some miscommunication between our staff and their staff that were quoting it because they were trying to get us the most efficient piece of equipment for the money. So they provided us data storage that's called block system, where due to the way WatchGuard stores and accesses its data, it has to be done on a file system. So we can't use that system. So they're returning it. And just like we were having a problem with in the beginning, it's going to end up being $11,000 more than we originally were approved for.
Okay, but we're going to get a credit for what we returned.
Yes, yes.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. City Manager, will you take us into reading of item number 1?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Council consider an ordinance providing for the reimbursement of capital expenditures incurred prior to the closing of financing. And that's a recommendation approval of this ordinance.
Is there a motion for item number 1?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion for item number 1? Yes, Councilman Durio.
Manager, can I get a little explanation on this item, please?
Yep. Basically, in the memo, as we stated, and in some of the budget workshops, there was a drainage project that came up that turned out to be an emergency drainage repair.
Okay.
And that's the Long Street drainage project. So we had to go into emergency repairs. So we're spending money already on the project, but we had not planned on issuing bonds until maybe January of 2024. So what this reimbursement resolution allows us to do is when we do go get those bond proceeds in January, we can reimburse the general fund for the expenses that they've incurred.
From the proceeds from the bond. Okay. All right. Thank you, Todd.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving item number 1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. City Manager, will you take us into the reading to item number 2, please?
Yes, council to consider a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a new interlocal agreement with Beaumont Independent School District for school crossing guard program. This is, I guess, reauthorization of the existing agreement that's expiring soon. So now's the time to revisit it for renewal.
Is there a motion for item number 2?
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Samuel. Any discussion? Yes, Councilman Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. With this being a partnership that I'm in full support of, I also be in full support of, if possible in the future, looking to expand upon that partnership. And what I mean by expanding is we're supporting BISD with the crossing guards, and we've been having a lot of discussion about some of the sidewalks in front of the schools, which play a role with safety of the kids. I think it would be appropriate to at least look at and see if there's an appetite with BISD to see if it could be a partnership with sidewalks specifically in front of our BISD schools, a partnership as well, not to exceed a dollar amount. With us looking at safety of the children, I think we should look at all the options and just be ready to expand on what's already existing. So I just want to see if it's something we can look at in the possible future about actually extending this partnership and making it even better than what it is. I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of bring it up since we're talking about renewing, which I do support renewing, but I actually want to take it to the next level and do more with it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to say I completely agree with Councilman Turner. Safety of the kids is everyone's responsibility. And we were just talking about the sidewalk. We had a plan for sidewalk. If I'm not mistaken, it was taken out of the budget in favor of having a healthier fund. So that might be something we could look at working with BISD on. And like he said, expanding on the program that we already have, because it's about kids' safety.
Yes, Councilman Getz.
I agree. Of course, crossing guards are incredibly important, and we need to have them. And we need to make sure they're there for the kids to be able to cross the street safely. When it comes to new permits for building, currently we require new commercial structures, if they're going to be building somewhere in the city, to put a sidewalk in front of that facility. Now, when BISD went on its building program of a few years ago after the 2008 bond passed, we as a city did not make BISD put sidewalks everywhere because they're their own separate entity. But it would be beneficial to the students if the school district would in fact help in this partnership that we are trying to establish with them to do their part for the sidewalks as well. So they're asking us to participate in the school crossing guard fund, which I have long thought is primarily a school district responsibility. And of course, sidewalks would ordinarily be considered a city responsibility. If we're going to partner, let's partner.
Councilman Samuel.
Mr. Boone, am I correct that this crossing guard program, that was not initiated by BISD to get us to help them? They cut out the crossing guard program, as I remember correctly, several years ago. And because we felt that that was necessary, the City of Beaumont stepped in and asked, if we partner with you, will you continue the partnership? Am I correct with that?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay. So this is not something that they came to us asking to help with. This is something we saw as necessary that they weren't going to provide. And we came to them, asked them to partner with us. I just want to make sure you all understand that.
Thank you. And Councilman Getz.
I don't recall that as being the history. Maybe I'm wrong, but it had to do for a period of time as to who was actually managing the school crossing guard program. And at one point in time, the city was managing the program, which was very inefficient because we might not know as a city what days schools are not even in session. And, we went to BISD to say, look, why don't y'all consider managing it and hiring the crossing guards? And, there was a lot of interaction between that. And as it stands now, who's managing the program, Chris, BISD or the city?
Yeah, the city used to manage it. We no longer do, but I'll let Mr. Barkowiak.
We used to manage it through Public Works. So we hired the crossing guards. We managed the crossing guards. To your point, it was difficult at times if they didn't show up. We were unaware of it because we weren't at the campuses in question. So it was difficult. With the formation of the BISD police force, it got brought up to move the program over to BISD to manage the crossing guards, but that we would continue to fund half the program. Because when we were managing it, BISD was funding half of that program. So we just switched the management of, making sure the crossing guards are there and hiring them and the rest of that over to BISD, but continue to split the cost of the program 50%.
And that's what's being asked for today.
Yes, sir. The current agreement is 50%. They bill us, we pay for that through Public Works, and this is continuing at 50% for the next 3 years.
And Mr. City Manager, if I could just ask, perhaps this coming year we can look at partnerships with them, but they budget just like we do. I know they're in their budget season, and the protection of our children are certainly all of ours, and we want to make sure we can work hand in hand as well as we can with the school district, which I believe we can do successfully. So if that can be something that can be discussed so that on both sides, on partnering, looking at those future costs. Sidewalks are expensive, as we know.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Saint.
Well, I simply brought that up because it's much easier to establish relationships when you work together with respect and courtesy, as opposed to making demands. And I just want to make sure we understand we're all in this together.
Could I add one more thing on the schools?
Yes.
I'm virtually certain the last round of new schools that were built did include sidewalks with them. So that last bond election those schools have sidewalks on their property around that school. So that does allow us to be able to connect to those.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I do believe some, if not all, we did require sidewalks. The issue, though, is, of course, that's in front of the school. It did not extend beyond the school, which is how to get the kids to and from.
Councilman Turner.
Well, my thing is, I'm a big advocate of BISD. I volunteer there. I spend a lot of time there. My intentions wasn't to cause any harm today by bringing this up. My intentions were to look at expanding on the partnership, that we already do have a good working relationship together. And I think however it started, it could be clarified once we have our joint meeting, since it was a two difference of opinions from two council members who were here on how it started. I just want to expand upon the partnership that we already have existing. It wasn't in intentions or no ill will towards BSD. Like I said, I'm full support and I volunteer there all the time. So I just want to see if there was options we can do to further work together even more.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving item number 2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Mr. City Manager, may we have the reading of item number 3?
Yes, Mayor. Council approve a resolution adopting the strategic plan 2023, 2028, and 2038 for the city of Beaumont. We're recommending approval. We're going to have a presentation, a short presentation from Assistant City Manager Chris Boone on the strategic plan.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This will be brief, but as many of us are aware, the city has not had a formal strategic plan for many years. However, but what is proposed today is a new strategic plan looking 15 years into the future and laying out a framework to achieve the vision laid out in that plan. Before you is a copy of the plan and executive summary. I will walk through these at a kind of a high-level overview in just a minute, but before I did want to take a moment to thank the mayor, the council, the management, city directors, our consultants, Sumac and Associates, as well as Sandra Davis, Kathy Allen, and Virtue Alexander, our executive assistants, for helping us with a lot of the logistics to get us to this point. So what is a strategic plan? It's not a document, it is a process. And it's a process that is reflected in the document before you. Strategic plan is a process in which an organization's leaders define their vision for the future and identify their organization's goals and objectives. The process includes establishing the sequence in which those goals should be realized so that the organization can reach its stated vision. Again, what you have in front of you is the summary of the document. You also have a one-page, it's the kind of the multicolor sheet here, which again touches on the highlights. What I want to focus on first is the mission. So the mission of the document, again, what we would say is the mission are principles that define the responsibility of city government and frame the primary services. So again, you can see in the strategic plan, our mission is Beaumont city government the mission is to provide exceptional municipal services and to plan for Beaumont's future in a financially responsible manner, an open, transparent, and ethical manner through a high-performing city team that provides outstanding customer service and involves our Beaumont community. And again, for the sake of the public, this is not something that we simply came up with academically. It is something that we, as management, department directors, the mayor and council, work through many hours to determine what this mission statement would be. Go ahead. Core beliefs. These are values that define performance standards and expectation for employees in our organization. So again, you can see PRIDE stands for professional, results, integrity, dedication to serve, and empathy. Again, these are the concepts and thoughts that were developed by the organization's leadership. Vision. So this really gets to the core of the strategic plan. Again, this is looking out 15 years into the future. So again, we ask ourselves, kind of closing our eyes, where do we want to be in 15 years? So the value-based principles that describe the preferred future in 15 years. And I'll go ahead and read these for the benefit of the public. Again, looking out 15 years, we would like to see Beaumont as a beautiful community, a safe community. We would like Beaumont to have a vibrant downtown riverfront, great neighborhoods, old and new, leisure opportunities for all, and connectivity to the world. Looking out 15 years, we would like our residents and businesses to have community unity and pride. And 15 years in the future, we want to make sure that Beaumont is a special place to live. And next. Goals. This is looking out really 5 years in the future. So we're digging down a little bit deeper. Strategic goals that focus outcome-based objectives and potential actions for 5 years to come. And I'll go ahead and read these for the benefit of the public. We want Beaumont to be a great place to live, financially sound city providing excellent services to the community. We want a vibrant downtown riverfront, livable neighborhoods, both old and new, and upgraded city facilities and infrastructure through investments. And then finally, looking at the execution of this plan. This is the policy agenda. And so what we're looking at here is a focus, 1 year focus, a work program, a policy agenda for mayor and city council, annual action plan, management agenda for staff, and these again are major projects. So if you look down at this list, this is the policy agenda. And again, we're really looking at what we as staff, what we as a city need to be doing over the next year in order to get us towards our goals and finally realizing the vision of the plan. Next, Tina. And this, again, is really more management and city staff, what we need to be working on in the coming years, in the coming year rather, 23 through 24, in order to help realize the plan and the goals set forth in this document. And again, you've got the summary document there. Again, this is just a summation of what is included in the overall plan. Any questions so far or comments?
Councilman Getz.
I'm looking at Civic Center upgrade, direction and funding, and masonry restoration, dressing room upgrade, concession stand. And again, we're looking at possibly turning that whole facility into a convention center. Does that mean we should consider hitting pause on that or what?
So part of the process is constantly monitoring. So to that end, we're doing some masonry restoration. The downtown plan, which you see here reflected in many of these action items, is a fluid process that's going on right now. We're meeting with Garfield on a regular basis. The downtown plan is being formulated. So again, all these things are underway for 2023, 2024. And while they may not be realized then, we're still doing the work of planning, reviewing, studying. So when we look at this again, and probably in the spring of 2024 or a little bit later, we'll have to make some adjustments. But these are the priorities that were set out in the document. So again, this is what we will be working on. But as mentioned, they may shift as we move forward through the years.
You go ahead. If you got Councilman Samuel, then Councilman Turner. Councilman Turner.
Chris, I see I-10 construction project monitoring. I get monitoring. Could we get a little bit more details on what are we monitoring and what are we looking for? And also, are the feeder roads included in that? Because we're working on I-10, but, I've been pretty consistent about some of those feeder roads and some of the complaints we've been getting. Now I've been getting calls about that Elegante area. It's pretty bad with that being one of our main hotels when you turn into that hotel and you got visitors coming to town, and I don't think that's the image we really want to give them on how we take care of our roads.
Yes, and so I may let Mr. Barkowiak echo or speak to it, but again, as we know, the interchange process, the East Tex process is going to be a multi-year. We've talked about it here many times. It's going to be certainly inconvenient. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but I think what we've got here, again, Bart, you can comment on it if you'd like, but is to really work with TxDOT to monitor their progress, but also, get that information out, share it with the public so that they have a full understanding. Bart, any thoughts?
We meet with TxDOT and their contractor on a monthly basis to discuss the I-10 project, both the Cardinal Drive, which is phase 1, and the East Tex portion. Predominantly what that consists of is coordination of the water and sewer utilities that cross their right-of-way and the work that needs to be done to those as part of that construction process, and as well as traffic control and detours and things of that nature that go back and forth between us and TxDOT. We also meet with TxDOT on a generic basis once a month about just mutual issues back and forth, and that would include passing along any complaints regarding feeder roads or any other TxDOT facility within the city that we're having issues with. We pass those along as we get them, but we also coordinate. A recent coordination was the restriping of MLK that had faded, and then we were pushing them to go ahead and move that up and get that restriped. I would encourage citizens, though, to directly report immediate issues like pavement problems on a feeder road directly to TxDOT. If they can report them to us and we'll pass it along, but getting it directly to them, gets it to them immediately. They're the ones who have to address that.
Yes, Bart, I understand. The reason I'm asking is I'm actually in an email thread with a few citizens about that, and we're still awaiting response. That's why it's pretty, I'm following your steps and we're going to TxDOT, but the response is delayed, which I understand, but I just like these citizens to know that what they're asking me about, I'm bringing it up and it's actually being addressed. I don't want them to feel like it's on deaf ears.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Durio, then Councilman Samuel.
Yeah. TxDOT is redoing the service roads. I guess that will be along Cardinal Drive, going south towards Port Arthur. You got to be real careful when you're going down there. We're going towards Lamar. And also the city over there by Elegante on Executive Boulevard, they repaved that all the way, I guess from right there where the Ferguson Law Firm is, all the way back to the service road, because it was in real bad shape, and I called it in, and they got on and they repaved that, and that's right there by the Elegante in that hotel that sits behind it. So just some of the things you can pass along, or you could have the folks that call me and I'll pass it along to them.
I just wanted to thank city manager and staff. Over the years, we've had components. We've talked about various things that we wanted to see in our city. But now we have a documented strategic plan in which we have to follow. This can be used as a barometer as to how much we're doing toward those things we talk about in the future. As I understand it, this was not to go into or deal with the various components in this plan. It is to present a plan so that we now have a document that we can move forward, adjust as we see fit throughout the budget years. Is that correct? Is that my correct understanding of what this is about?
This is the presentation of the strategic plan to council. You started this process in early spring, maybe. Mm-hmm. And we're just now concluding it, and you have a document. You'll have these items for further discussion. Now you have a roadmap, to identify the things here. and you go ahead because I can add what I have later, Councilman.
Well, I'm just, I could be forgetting some stuff. It's been a long time, but this is the first time we've had a document that is this far out in print for us to follow, for us to gauge what kind of progress we're making. This is the first time. So I just want to commend staff for this. This brings us to a point that we can seriously move forward without having some of the stumbling blocks that we've encountered over the years. So I say thank you, and thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
You're welcome. And Council, this is again, it's a 15-year plan. It's a 15-year roadmap for you. And it's different than some other strategic plans. It's just not pretty pictures. It identifies the things that you need to do as a city, or you've identified yourself that you want to accomplish as a city. And it's not just, it doesn't just sit on the shelf. You'll get frequent updates. We'll bring staff in to give you an update of each one of these projects about every quarter or more often even. And they'll tasks are assigned to staff, people who are responsible for their completion, and we'll be coming back to you. So it's not just a document to sit there. And if you look at 23 and 24, you've done quite well already. If you look at the list of projects under the management agenda there, strategic plan, you're getting it today, AT&T demolition, we're preparing to bid on it. We've done customer service training, bond rating, we're working on that through budgeting. The CIP, you'll be approving that with the budget. Sidewalk master plan, you've talked quite a bit about that and what's happening there. Dog park, we're getting the design and bids together on it. City employee classification compensation study, you'll be getting a report. So if you look at this, we are making good progress on this. The city legislative agenda, you have it in front of you, that document. So it provides a good roadmap for you for reference sake. And when other people show up in the future and they'll say, well, where did that idea come from? You can look at the document and say, well, city council and city staff.
Thank you. Any?
Yeah, just real quickly, just kind of no problem. It's good. Next steps. Again, we're going to share this with the public and promote it because we want the public to be aware of, kind of what we're working on, what our priorities are moving forward. We will provide you with a leader guide, which will be this information plus some supplemental leadership information. I think you saw that in the earlier workshops, but we're going to compile it into a single guide for each of us to work off of. And again, we, as the manager mentioned, we're already working to implement the plan on many of these items, and we'll continue to. As mentioned, and when you look in the leader guide, you'll see dates, expected dates for completion of these points, as well as who's responsible for each of these. And again, monitor progress, revisit periodically, and make any needed adjustments. Because things do happen and changes need to be made. But as we move forward, finally celebrate our successes. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, can I have a motion for council approval of resolution adopting a strategic plan 2023 through 2028 through 2038 for the city of Beaumont?
So moved to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. At the close of City Council meeting today, the council will hold an executive session to consider matters in accordance with Section 551.087 deliberations regarding economic development negotiation, to wit, TERS consultant presentation of proposed downtown Beaumont tax increment reinvestment zone for economic development. Consider matters related to the contemplating or pending litigation in accordance with Section 551.071 of the Government Code, Caleb Finter versus City of Beaumont and Christopher Boone. International, calls number B210244, International Association of Firefighters Local 399 versus City of Beaumont, Kenneth R. Williams in his official capacity as city manager and Earl White in his official capacity as fire chief, calls number D210950. Mr. City Manager, will you please take us into the work session?
Public hearing.
Yeah,
What I meant to do.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor. Public hearing. Here applicant requests for funding from the 2023 Hotel Occupancy Tax Grant Program. We have people, entities here today to talk about their application with the hot tax. City Clerk, Mr. Broussard, has a list of people I think are signed up to speak, and she'll be calling them to the platform to speak on their project.
So the public hearing is now open. If Ms. Broussard, if you will ask those who signed up to come forward.
Amanda Yarbrough with Beaumont Children's Museum.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Y'all making me nervous. Y'all look official up there. Thank y'all for letting us speak today. I want to tell you a little bit about the Beaumont Children's Museum. The Beaumont Children's Museum strives to promote family fun in an interactive environment where children and their families thrive and get excited about learning together. Our mission is to ignite the growth and relationships of children's, families, and communities through interactive learning and play. The Beaumont Children's Museum has shown much success with increased attendance of over 62,000 guests in 2022 and 28% of those visitors traveling from outside of the Golden Triangle region. As we continue to attract more visitors, BCM finds many ways on our program and event calendar to encourage and impact positively local tourism. Not only is the museum promoting tourism, we are also providing family-friendly entertainment to support our greater community's quality of life. Did you know children's museums are the fastest growing sector of the museum community because that is an increased recognition of the power of the hands-on, interactive, and playful learning exhibits and experiences they provide. A children's museum and other targeted programming serves as an extension of the home and school environment. This third place allows for stronger communities, safe spaces for growth and discovery, and a world of opportunity for our city. We know travelers seldom choose their destinations because of one particular reason or spot, but because of multiple great activities that entertain for their trip. Over 63% of leisure travelers are families, and families choose their destination based on a variety of activities. Beaumont has this. With such a significant increase of guests this past year, the Children's Museum knows that it is important to evaluate our next steps. BCM currently has the opportunity to assess a new location for exhibit expansion. With our continued new growth and new possible location, BCM would become a much more anticipated destination to visit here in Beaumont. Additionally, adding museum billboards on high-volume traveled highways and boosted media coverage and campaigns on radio, podcasts, and statewide publications. This would promote and remind travelers of the Beaumont Children's Museum as a place to stop for a break and a place to return and enjoy. More importantly, encouraging staying overnight to explore the city of Beaumont and all the great places it has to discover. We hope you will choose to support the Children's Museum by designation of some hot tax funds to help us encourage growth within our museum. Thank you. Any questions about the application?
Councilman Getz?
Hi, Mike.
Amanda, so
Yes, sir.
part of the funding that you're asking for would be used to evaluate a new location for the Children's Museum?
Correct. We are assessing the possibility of use of a new location. It is in the very beginning stages, but it will be necessary to be able to evaluate the expansion of that space.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very
Thank you.
much.
Mayor, before I call the next speaker, if you have any handouts, if you will provide those to me and I will pass them to council while you're speaking, we can kind of move it along. And then I did not time her, but I will start the timer for the next speaker. I apologize. Todd, and I think that's is it Heft? Heft, I'm so sorry. Spindletop Gladys City Museum. Thank you.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name's Todd Heft, and I'm representing Spindletop Gladys City Boomtown Museum. My wife, Brianna Heft, is the director. She couldn't be with us today, unfortunately, because she's got some staff training, so I'm going to present for you. As you all know, the Spindletop Museum site is a Southeast Texas landmark, and the application focuses on 3 important projects at the museum. First are exhibit enhancements that will include immersive museum exhibits using audio, video, and virtual tours. And next are 2 events. Holidays in Boomtown will feature light shows, visits with Santa, musical entertainment, a vendor fair, and arts and crafts activities. The second event is a hopefully annual steampunk festival. Now, for those that are not familiar with the term steampunk, it basically is industrial era, innovation-based tech fantasy. And for reference, think of that movie Wild Wild West with Will Smith from 1999. It's very steampunk-esque. As far as the museum statistics, as noted in the application, they recorded 269 hotel stays in the last year or so, based on 2.8% of all museum visitors noting this on the sign-in sheet. Not everybody signs in, but they try to do their best to get everybody to sign in. And a new method of recording this data is being presented to their staff during this training as we speak to get firmer numbers. Total visitors for the recent years period is 9,371. Finally, promotion efforts will focus on Galveston, Houston, Lake Charles, Fort Worth, and locally in Beaumont, hoping to get attendance to 12,000 annually. The special events such as the Steampunk Festival have wide appeal to visitors and manufacturers from all over the state, and as close to the state line as we are, also outlining states, encouraging visitors to stay at local hotels and enjoy what Beaumont has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? There you go, Councilman Turner.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask this question to some of the presenters. I know we come up with the total visitor numbers. I just want to know, how do y'all calculate those numbers? I'm sorry, Amanda, I didn't ask you as well, but just when we say those numbers, I'm just interested to know how do we calculate those numbers?
At Spindletop, they have a sign-in sheet. So when somebody comes and buys tickets, they say, will you please sign in our sheet? And sometimes the visitors get preoccupied with the gift shop and they don't think to sign in the sheet. But what they're doing now is they're putting together a form on an iPad. So as soon as they buy the tickets, they say, what's your zip code? Yeah. Are you staying in a hotel? Very simple. So that's what they're training on actually right now. So that's how they do it at Spindletop.
Well, I'm asking to actually learn. That's why I'm asking. So thank you.
You bet.
Might have a potential volunteer.
They'll take you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Penny, and I think that's Lelux, Boomtown Film Society.
And I'm sorry I don't have enough handouts for everybody. I hope y'all will share. The handout is the program from the recent festival that we just had. Good afternoon, Mayor West and Council. I am the festival director for Boomtown Film Festival. This is the second year that I will be doing it. Boomtown has had a festival in Beaumont since 2008, except that they were shut down 2 years for the pandemic. And so we're kind of in a rebuilding phase right now. And so what does that have to do with tourism in Beaumont? Well, we utilize the Texas Energy Museum, the Art Museum of Southeast Texas, and the historic Jefferson Theater as venues for the film festival. And we bring in filmmakers from all over the country. Usually it's been like more of a regional festival, and I've been kind of sort of spreading my fingers out. So we had filmmakers from as far as Rhode Island, Florida, and California this year. In fact, the Rhode Island filmmakers stayed an entire week beyond the festival. And this also impacts your newly designated film-friendly status because we are actually bringing filmmakers here. And so they can actually see what you have to offer. We, besides using the local media, we also, in social media ads, we target about a 5-hour circumference, to like Lafayette, Dallas, and San Antonio. But besides that, being filmmakers, we also go to other film festivals and network with them. And then we always invite everybody to come visit us. And so, in fact, I'll actually be in Jerome, Arizona next month. And so that's kind of invaluable as far as the advertising. You can't put a dollar amount on that. We have actually received a $9,000 grant from the Texas Commission on the Arts, and what we're requesting for HOP funds is for the matching funds that we need for that for next year. It's growing. We're trying to bring in bigger names so that we can bring in bigger attendance, but I think we did a really good job this year. And basically, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here today, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Getz.
It says expected attendance. Is that correct, 300?
Yes, we have in the neighborhood of 200 to 300. So yeah, we would hope that it would be about 300 because it's not just filmmakers, but also we have people that come in, that just drove in from Houston. We had several that just drove in from Houston because we had a Houston filmmaker that on our panels, she was part of the Women in Film panel. And so I learned of a lot of people that just drove in for that. We had the screenwriter that drove in. I think she came in from Austin. But there's also a lot of people that come in locally. This past year, we actually kind of interfered with Lamar's graduation, so we didn't get as many Lamar students at the time, but usually a lot of the Lamar students come and attend too. So we've moved it to February for this next year, so we won't interfere with that this year.
I appreciate that, and I support, Beaumont being a film-friendly town and the Boomtown Film Festival, but I'm trying to rationalize in my mind how you have something like the Beaumont Children's Museum with 62,000 visitors, and then you're 300, and the scale seems to be.
Half of those are filmmakers, which could feasibly come here to film one day, which is with your Beaumont Film Friendly. And when they come back, they also use hotels and catering and all of that. So it's twofold. It's not a big, huge festival, but it is good for tourism too, because if we can get bigger names, eventually we could get to the 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000. We're in a growing phase. Like this last time, we had Casme from The Voice that came in as a musical one. Well, she came on at the last minute, so we really didn't have but just a couple of days to try and promote her. If you have more time to promote it, but we had filmmakers that came in. Like right now, we can't afford like the big star, we can't get in Brad Pitt or, right now. But one thing we have been doing is we're pulling in crew members that have worked on big films. Like we had the two prop masters that one of them worked on Stranger Things. The other one worked on Walker, Texas Ranger and just Walker. And they have like 30 years experience between them. So that brought in quite a bit. We're trying to get in the production manager from the Black Panther movies for this year. We tried last year, but she was out of the country. And with productions being kind of shut down at the moment because of the strikes, we're hoping that maybe we can get her, because she's actually based in New Orleans. So she's local enough that we could get her in. And I think that could potentially be a draw. You know, she's responsible for what Black Panther looked like. And she won an Academy Award for it. You know, so we're working on it. We're growing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy Fegan, Texas Energy Museum.
Hello, good afternoon. Am I waiting for them or just?
Are they doing handouts?
Just going to hand them to you. Okay. So yes, my name is Crystal Fagan and I wear 2 pairs of glasses. So if we do a Q&A, I have to do that. I'm a new director at the Texas Energy Museum. I've only been there for 6 months. I was an educator at the Art Museum for 11 years before that, so I'm new, but I'm not Beaumont Museum new. I've had to do a lot of research to be able to even pull these things together for you today, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about what I've learned. The Energy Museum was founded by the City of Beaumont. It was created by the people that sat in these same seats 36 years ago. The Energy Museum was a city idea. The museum's bylaws even state that the current city manager and mayor shall serve as advisory directors. Sorry, is that bad news? I'll contact you. 36 years ago, City Council selected the first board of directors and oversaw all stages of the museum's development. So it was a city idea and it was city made. It's been given the same level of support for 36 years. That's 16 years before hot funding existed. Through city support, grants, and an annual fundraiser, the Energy Museum pays for its own employees, programming costs, upkeep of its exhibitions, collections, and archives. We pay our own utilities, security, lawn service, elevator maintenance, and we even pay to rent the Civic Center for our annual blowout. The city created a museum that highlights one of the most significant discoveries of the modern world. That discovery happened right here in Beaumont. Spindletop helped modernize the entire world. We influenced everything. This is Beaumont pride. But today is specifically about hotel occupancy tax funding. So the questions really are, does the Energy Museum put heads in beds, and do people come to Beaumont for the Energy Museum? Well, like I said, I had to do some research, but yes and yes. Under Governor Ann Richards, the Energy Museum was declared the official Texas Museum on Energy. That's right here, statewide. We are that museum. Under Governor Rick Perry, the Energy Museum was awarded for being a shining star of Texas tourism. Earlier this year, the CVB gave the previous director, Ryan Smith, an award for his efforts in Beaumont tourism. Tim's annual fundraiser called The Blowout has approximately 1,200 attendees, industry executive that do business with any of our Southeast Texas companies that come into downtown, and approximately 25% of them stay in hotels. Last year's museum attendance was about 8,500. I'm new, we're on track to make 12,000 this year. And our overall attendance from just general guests are about 15 to 20% of hotel stays. Our out-of-state, out-of-country attendance sits at about 35%. And I heard you ask, we are self-declared as well. We ask kindly for them to sign the guest book. Even if they don't, we say, you know, are you from here or not? And we kind of write it down. But I mean, if they say go away, oh, am I done? No. Ask a question.
But can we have her continue, Mr. West, for another minute maybe?
Yeah.
All right. Our out-of-state, out-of-country attendance sits at about 35%. We are a draw. We're recognized for tourism, and we do put heads in beds. What I'm asking today is really simple. I'm just asking that you guys do the same thing that the people that made the museum did 36 years ago and continue to take pride in Beaumont and its history in our museum. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Getz.
Yes.
I'm looking for your application. Is it in the
Not my fault. I put it was on time.
Okay.
They were delivered this morning.
How much are y'all asking for?
At the same amount of support we did for the last 36 years.
95,000.
95,000.
95 on the front.
No inflation requests.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's the last one in the packet.
It's in there, Councilman.
Last one.
Last one.
Thank you.
My first one.
Thank you.
Laura Childress, Mardi Gras, Southeast Texas.
It's a little shorter. Well, I just want to say thank you for having us here today. We came before you approximately 4.5 years ago about bringing our festival to Beaumont. We asked you at that time to be the host city, and we'll be asking for that again for our next contract. We do feel like that Mardi Gras Southeast Texas is a tourism event. It brings people from all over the state and also serves our local community as a family event. Many people attend and re-attend for 4 days. Unlike some of the other organizations that have spoke, we don't have a year or even months that we have to count attendance. We do it all within a 4-day period. But Mardi Gras does start about, well, we work on it all year, but I'm talking about actual people coming into town that are staying in overnight stays in hotels. It's usually about 10 days to 2 weeks before the event and about a week after to clean up and settle out everything that we have to do. We do continue to seek new entertainment because that is what brings folks into this festival. We do have, as you can see on your front sheet, there are 8 parades. We do have 25 floats. We just bought 3 more as making an investment in the future. We do support 14 local nonprofits. And our attendance is really counted in 2 ways. One is what actually attends through the gates and pays a fee to get into the festival grounds. I have included in your package a sheet that talks about how the breakdown for the event settlement went. We do, we count them. You can see gate admission, and then you go down to sponsors. That's the number, crew members. There's a lot of people that come locally, but there's also an equal amount that come from out of town. Most of the vendors are out of town, not all, but maybe half, let's say, and they do have to have a place to stay and rest and be ready for the next day. We do keep some long hours. There's some 12-hour days there, and the amount of work that goes in before is we do it in a very hurried fashion because we're trying to put it together to be ready on a Thursday night. We do pay the city back for a facility fee. And we do have expenses that continue to increase, just like everyone else. However, we are a complete volunteer staff. We do not have any paid employees. Our office space is donated. All of our utilities are donated. We do have a building now in Beaumont where we store floats and we pay property taxes. We're trying to be a good partner, and we feel like the city is a good partner for us.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilman Turner.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I don't know if this may be appropriate for you or staff. I noticed our security costs in the interesting facts. Is that cost incurred by the city of Beaumont? Is it incurred by the
Sir, that's paid by
nonprofit?
Mardi Gras.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for your police inside and outside along the parade routes.
Okay, so you guys actually pay for that. It's not funded by
That
the
is
city?
correct. I hire the policeman an off-duty rate, and we break it into 2 categories, one which is inside the festival grounds, and then what's outside on the parade route. Now, we do have one separate entry in there that is the carnival security, because we do have a state fair quality carnival, and we do put officers in that area as well.
Councilman Neal, Councilman Felshaw, Councilman Getz.
Thank you, Mayor. So I see where y'all claim 100,000 attendance every year, correct?
Roughly. It does vary. You're talking about on the police
On the first page.
Oh, on that, yes. That is counted from the parade routes, which is an estimated number, but it's kind of gauged also by the police department as how much security they will need. We kind of know what to expect now after 4 years, and then you add that to the festival grounds, which was 14,000 last year. Our event is weather friendly or unfriendly, however you want to look at it, but it's always cold and it's generally wet, and we still bring in those numbers. So people do like the event. They do have fun. They start their kids young. Their families come back for, it's been called the family reunion time. All of those people are staying in hotels and affecting our tourism.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Philshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. The first year you approached the City of Beaumont asking us to host this, you made a commitment to ensuring that this was a family-friendly environment.
Yes, sir.
And I'm asking this question primarily for our citizens because I know that that has been a concern of some of them just because of the image they get in their minds when they think of Mardi Gras that comes out of Louisiana.
Yes.
And so I'm asking this for the sake of them. Your commitment to family-friendly continues.
Absolutely.
Nothing has changed.
And part of the dollars that we want to use from this grant would be to increase our children's activity area. It is a free event that we provide for those children. We also have a Munchkin parade. We have a pet parade. These are all things that have no fees on them. They can come in, walk the parade route, go back out, and then catch a big parade where the floats are at. So we try to offer something that doesn't cost every year.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Getz.
I grew up in Port Arthur, played football with Tim Romero, and I remember when y'all were first contemplating moving, you talked to Port Neches, and then that didn't work, but the conversation turned to Beaumont, and I want to thank you. You have provided an incredible festival for our community, but not just our community, as evidenced here, Southeast Texas and beyond. And it's safe. Your commitment to safety is exceptional. It's you hire enough police officers so that when anybody comes down there, there is a great sense of security. And keep doing what you're doing because it's really going well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will say this quickly, that it is a passion of our board. Like I say, there are no paid salaries, and everyone does it because they believe in this festival. And it is important that we have a quality event for our citizens and our tourists so that we can continue to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I failed to introduce Mr. Carter, so I'd like y'all to meet James Carter. He's our first vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Eileen Castle, Art Museum of Southeast Texas.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City Manager, management, and citizens of Beaumont. We are here requesting hot tax funding for the support for the Art Museum of Southeast Texas. We are very proud to announce that we were reaccredited through the American Alliance of Museums last month. We're in the top 3% of the museums in the United States that uphold the best practices, highest standards in the museum field of honesty, integrity, and accountability. Currently, we are the only museum in the area that is accredited aside from the McFadden Ward House. Accreditation lasts for 10 years. This museum started in 1950. We offer free admission and we are open 7 days a week. Our cafe is open 5 days a week for lunch. And aside from regular programming, we offer event spaces for meetings, dinners, receptions, and which also attract hotel guests. We are recognized throughout the state of Texas and Louisiana for our changing exhibitions. 3 or 4 times a year, artists come to install their artwork, often staying several days. Guest scholars, gallerists, curators, and collectors join us for programming, for lectures, gallery talks, further accounting for hotel stays. These exhibitions continuously draw visitors from all 50 states as well as internationally. We are providing enrichment to the community, starting with our 13 education programs for people of all ages and abilities, including special needs. 2 multi-visit programs are direct partnerships with BISD. We also provide outreach programming for remote and outlying communities. We usually have a large presence in community events. We are proud of the fact that we have an ethnically diverse staff and board, which has been commended by the Texas Commission on the Arts. Our attendance is making a comeback post-COVID. In the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year 22-23, we had 28,000 people. Our quarterly Free Family Arts Days continue to draw large audiences. We are surpassing levels since 2015. We've had the largest attendance, so we're very proud of that. We've partnered with the Texas Energy Museum for the past 3 decades during Family Arts Days, the Fall Family Arts Days, Eat a Bug, and Dinosaur Day. In the past few years, the other museums in the city have joined us for what now has become Museum Madness Weekend. But we started it. We started it 30 years ago. We're the first ones. We appreciate the financial in-kind support that the city has given us, especially Thomas Astworth and Keith Folsom, who oversee building maintenance. I'm almost done. And David Lornette for our HVAC system, and Kenneth Regret for grounds care. And of course, our friends at the CVB, who have been so crucial in promoting our events. Finally, AMSET has a stellar record of completing projected programming efforts, and for its accurate and honest reporting of grants awarded on the state, local, and federal level. I promise you that your hot tax funds will be well spent at the Art Museum of Southeast Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Turner?
Something that stood out to me was when you spoke about accreditation. That's real big to me. Can you give me, or give this council more details on how that process works, and, you know, being one of the only ones in this area to be accredited? You know, I think that's huge. Can you kind of speak more to that?
Thank you. It's a 2-year process of the application, and what you do is submit all your paperwork. It's strategic planning, which I was very impressed with your strategic plan, by the way, because I've learned a lot more about strategic planning through our process as well. They also look at all of our paperwork to make sure that our collections management policies in order. They look at our HVAC system. They look at the way that we handle our exhibitions. They look at all our accounting records. So it's a very rigorous process. It starts out with, we submit all our paperwork to Washington, D.C., and the in-house state paid staff looks at it. Then they send 2 site visitors to Beaumont who spend a couple of days with us, and they interview our board, our staff, and various city people, and then they go back and make their report, and then it goes to the commission, which is museum leaders throughout the United States, and then they elect to either accredit you or not.
Wow.
So
Thank
we're
you.
very proud of it, top 3%. So
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
thank you.
Maybe we can look at making it 4 minutes in the future.
Yeah. Carly Stansberry, Beaumont Heritage Society.
Am I good? Okay, sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Carly Stansberry, and I'm here representing Beaumont Heritage Society in the 1845 John J. French Museum, the oldest fully restored home in Beaumont. The museum is open to the public for tours and special events and serves our local communities, as well as tourists across the state, nation, and even the world. Over the last 2 years, we've made some incredible improvements, including rebuilding the brick walkway, making major repairs to our office building, re-leveling the museum kitchen, and making many other necessary improvements. While doing this, we've hosted new events, created new educational programming, and even managed to expand staff. This was made possible through hotel occupancy tax funds, keeping the doors of the museum open and funding our tour programming. Presently, we are working on a brand new virtual tour software that will make our tours accessible from anywhere in the world. This will entice visitors to tour the museum in person, and it will also make the museum more accessible to those who may otherwise have difficulties navigating the museum and the tour. And it will also attract teachers from outside communities to bring their students to our area. In the near future, we look forward to completing a children's exhibit to be housed in the newly repaired David French office building. We're actively making these efforts to improve our sites for guests and to be a more active participant in heritage tourism, which is a $7.3 billion industry in Texas. This accounts for 11% of all travel in the state, travel the John J. French Museum aims to target and bring right here to Beaumont. These plans, goals, and visions will not be accomplished without the continued support of the Hotel Occupancy Tax Grant, the City of Beaumont, and City Council in keeping our museum doors open for tour programming. Since the organization's beginnings in 1967, this hidden gem has been a staple for educating the entire public on Beaumont's humble beginnings before the discovery of oil. While we understand the guidelines of this funding are changing, we are seeking one more year of continued support. Please keep our doors open for the benefit of generations preceding and those to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Council? Thank you.
Sue Bard, DB CAD and Southeast Texas Arts Council. The mayor's call.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to come before you today. I think I'm going to start with CTEC first because it came first, if you all don't mind. The Southeast Texas Arts Council was established in 1975 and represents 3 counties, Jefferson, Orange, and Hardin. In 2002, they decided that they would start publishing a tourism magazine. And today, CTEC is only asking for funding support for that magazine, but it does cover the 3 counties. When we did this, we opened up an account through our banking system specifically targeting LALER funds so it never gets mixed with general funds. What we do is and the change came in 2008 that we would do it all in-house. Now, not the printing and not the distributing, but the design, the layout, the stories, the photography, and all the writing is done by a gentleman that works for the Southeast Texas Arts Council. And that is the only request we're asking for, is so that we can continue it. It's a biannual magazine. It's high quality. We pay for the printing. It gets sent to 11 different Texas travel centers and to a large area in Galveston and Houston. And like I said, it's twice a year. Are there any questions about that grant application? I mean, we cover and feature all the active events. There's a big billboard, and there's a special page that lists all of the hotels that are available in the various counties with contact information for them. So it promotes tourism and it promotes the hotel industry.
I don't believe there's any questions for that one. You want to move on to
Yeah,
Beaumont
this one.
Cultural Arts?
Thank you. As authorized by House Bill 2208 of the 79th Legislature in 2005, the Texas Commission on the Arts can designate cultural districts in cities across Texas. Cultural districts are special, this is according to the state. Cultural districts are special zones that harness the power of cultural resources to stimulate the economic development, community vitality, and these districts can become focal points for generating businesses, attracting tourists, stimulating cultural development, and fostering civic pride. I've been working in downtown Beaumont for 15 years, and I couldn't help but notice the improvements, the brick sidewalks, the light posts, landscaping, the addition of the downtown events center, the skateboard park, and the Lakeside Center, to name a few. But I've even learned about the amount of money that's been spent on downtown, just on the infrastructure. You have 6 museums in downtown. The Jefferson Theater and the Julie Rogers Performing Arts Theater. It certainly seemed to me that Beaumont already had an amazing cultural district. You just didn't have state designation. That was 6 minutes?
You can continue.
Okay, good.
No.
Initially, designation only meant some added credibility and a little promotion from the state. I mentioned it to a few people at the time, in around 2015, people weren't terribly interested. But in 2016, TCA announced a new grant program specifically designed to promote the growth of designated cultural districts. At that legislative session, TCA was authorized to grant $5 million over the biennium to organizations presenting activities within these designated districts. Now I decided was the time to pursue it, so we did. We established DBCAD in 2017 and received designation in 2019. The state has just increased funding for the next biennium now to $15 million. And in the application, you'll see the state has 1,120 some odd cities, cities, and there are only 53 cultural districts. Some cities have more. Houston has 7, for instance. But Beaumont has one. I'm real proud that Beaumont has one. So over the course of the past 3 years, several organizations have applied for these funds. And over these past 3 years, $147,000 has come in from state funding for the activities and events that are being put on by these arts organizations. Those organizations include the Art Museum, the Symphony, the Beaumont Civic Ballet, the Southeast Texas Arts Council, DBCAD, and Beaumont Community Players. And we're expecting a couple of new applicants this next application cycle. I mean, to me, just by virtue of its existence, DBCAD was designed to be a tourist destination, as well as the source of funding support for other organizations offering tourism activities.
Councilman Getz.
Good afternoon, Sue. I'm looking at your application and listening to your talking points, and you say you expect attendance of 300,000?
I got those numbers from the CVB when I asked, because I have to report to TCA. That's what I was told. Those were the numbers from the Beaumont CVB.
Can you expand on that a little bit? I mean, what did your group do, or Downtown Culture or Arts District do? Because I must have missed that.
Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that DBCAD has to present activities. It means we attract activities into the district, and by virtue of the art museum, it's all these tourisms. That's all I can count. That's the only way I can count. DBCAD can put on separate activities and events. For instance, it participated in the Mural Festival this past year. And it will put on, it has one planned for November, but it counts all of the people that come in and have accessed those state funds and put on activities and events. I don't know how else
So
to.
basically what you're saying is you're counting people that have come to the Energy Museum, the Children's Museum, and all of that, and you're capturing all of that attendance, possibly Mardi Gras too, as part of.
Because it's I'm not sure how I could say just because we're a district and separate the activities that would have taken place anyway.
So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So what exactly are you asking for in terms of money, and what would it be used for?
It would be used to maintain a part-time director who operates the district and keeps it running, so that these other organizations can access these funds from the state they otherwise would not be able to do.
So these other organizations are accessing funds from the state just because?
Yes, they have to get
Cultural Arts
permission from the district, the cultural district.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't believe so. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Ben, did you want to make a presentation? Oh,
Yes, he is.
you just didn't sign up, but it's okay.
If you'll just provide your name and your organization you're speaking on.
Councilmember Mayor West, my name is Mendai with Obana Restaurant Group. I'm here speaking on behalf of the application for the hot tax for Beaumont Mural Fest.
Just give you guys an update. Beaumont Mural Fest was founded in 2022. It was a private event and a festival that came out of a crazy idea my friend and I had about using public art to beautify the city. We never expected to get as big as it did, but last year, with the help of the city and making it an actual free event, we went from year one of having 2,500 attendance between 2 days to doing over 5,000 people per day on the 2-day festival this past year. And just off of the Pour 09 and the Beaumont Mural Fest and artist imprints, we did over 4 million on social media. Okay, and that's not counting the CVB. CVB has its own numbers separately from that. So just off of social media imaging, printing, off the 4 million, 40% of that was out of state. Not in the States, not just out of city, but it was out of state. So right now we're having effect of overreaching. We've had 3 requests from separate cities using Beaumont Mural Fest to curate their own festival this past year. So for the year 2024, we have the date set to be the second weekend in March. We have the location that's been procured by the Giglio, the city storage building that we're going to be using. They're resetting that. We're going to tie into the event center with it. Our goal is to, hopefully with the city's help, keep it the same. We have presented that to the event center already. They have the date. I think they clarified for us that we're good to go on that. I just told that I didn't present what the hot tax was for, and the hot tax was basically to invite visiting artists. We are still going to have the same approach. We're still going to have local artists. We're going to have pre-existing artists coming back that's visiting. We already have full requests, 100% out of 100% return attendance requests for all the previous artists. And we're hoping to open more doors for local artists this year with more real estate, bigger walls, bigger buildings. We're hoping to keep possibly 50%, over 50% of it downtown. And we're trying to hopefully present 2 potentials for city buildings. With the budget, we're able to bring in specific high-end class artists that can provide these murals for these buildings for the city's request to draw attention to local artists. If you guys visited with local artists, a couple of samples, Megan Cobb, Marie Zabelman, we have several people that's been stacked with schedules that can't even keep up now. They have a waiting list to get murals done by local artists now. As you see all the new business coming up, they're no longer sticking to your traditional paint and upgrading. They're using art as what they're doing to develop their new entertainment, new restaurant. And what we're trying to do is basically bring a revolving annual potential to outreach to not just nationwide, but internationally to bring attention to Beaumont and provide new art every single year.
That was spot on,
pretty good.
man. Spot on. Any questions, Councilman Turner?
You know, Mural Fest is pretty new to Beaumont, and the response is pretty good. But can you kind of speak to like the destination spots these murals create? Like not only during the festival, but what takes place with these murals after the festival as well?
Correct. So those numbers are just imprints off the entire week. That is not, we have no way of tracking what happens after the fest. But I can tell you, out of one of the pieces last year, that piece is currently being voted as top U.S. mural for 2023 and is on the international panel to be voted for international award for best mural 2023. And that is the piece done on Cedar Park. That is the 3rd largest mural in the state of Texas. So with that being provided, if you guys see the feeds from CBB, they have imprints of people coming in, driving in just for these murals. And we now have requests, not just from outside Beaumont, but for example, Orange, City of Port Arthur, both have reached out to CBB and myself trying to get involved as part of Beaumont Mural Fest. So now, not only is the festival benefiting just Beaumont alone, it's benefiting Southeast Texas as a whole, with Beaumont being the center of it, because Orange will never have its own festival as was Port Arthur. Well, not if they ask me, but going through Beaumont, they're going to be able to procure what they need on a smaller scale, just because I think Beaumont has the infrastructure for it, as opposed to outside cities that want it may not be able to do it on that scale, but they can kind of grow through Beaumont.
One more question that's following up. Man, can you kind of speak to the value of art we're getting for what we're paying compared to what would be actually paid if we want to go out and pay these artists privately?
Current request, our request for $50,000 is basically 13% of the actual budget for the festival. Our artist budget average is right around 20%. The rates that the artists are coming in are 20% of what they normally charge. So for the cedar mural, he did the entire mural for $10,000. That is a $100,000 commission, not counting material. The gentleman was here for 3 weeks. We had 4 photographers, 2 from New York, 1 from LA, 1 from Chicago. And that piece made LA Times, made the New York Post. So these are big, big names that we're bringing in, not just to introduce travel, but you're bringing in now, you're having people flying in, not just from other cities within Texas, but now you have national travel that's flying in.
Councilman Samuel?
Yeah, would you repeat would you repeat which mural that, pardon me?
The mic, it makes
Repeat the mural that has received national acclaim.
Correct.
For those who might not know.
So for last year, we had 1 mural that was voted into the top 100 for the U.S. mural, which is located on the building on Orleans. This past year, we had 2 murals, one which was done on James Payne's building, the first national building of Frank Robinson. That one is being voted for top 25 for U.S. mural. And the one done on Cedar Park of Project Genesis by Drew Merritt, that one is the one that's being voted for International Mural of the Year. And from my understanding is, based on what artist feedback told us, that piece is going to go down in history as one of the best, if not the best in Texas.
Awesome. Councilman Getz?
I want to compliment you on your idea of getting this started, and thank you for having that conversation with your friend a few years ago to get that going. I think I recently saw a publication being put out either by the CVB or the city as where the various murals are located, that people, is that something that is available now?
Yes, sir. They just released it last week, 2 weeks ago, yes.
Something very cool. People can come in, and we need to promote that and make sure that people are able to access that so they can follow along the mural path.
So the goal is to kind of catalog and make this catalog of murals grow, because the murals are here to stay. When we put them up, we take proper treatment. When we finish, they're expected to last anywhere from 10, 20 to 25 years. So the idea is not to paint over them until it's necessary. Right now is to get as many local businesses on this brochure as possible. Not only are they going to visit the art, they're going to visit the local business itself and drive economics into the city. And now the catalog is one of the biggest. I think the only city we're behind is Austin. I know for a fact Beaumont has a bigger catalog than Houston and Dallas.
That's amazing. One question I do have, though, is are you running out of canvases? I mean, do you have places to still go?
We've been fortunate that we've been having people reach out to us since the festival started. We did have, like I said, Giggler Preferred. They procure the city warehouse. That's going to be the main festival site with partnership with the city event center. We have some other business owners downtown that have picked up buildings that's wanting us to do work on it. Big Thicket National Park reached out, wanting to do one for their 50th anniversary. Like I said, we're not quite running all the buildings yet, but my goal is just we're kind of planning 2-3 years ahead of time right now, and not just to have the Mural Fest at one location, but to rotate it all throughout downtown Beaumont. So we're kind of moving the art as we go, and we can always go back to a certain spot. I know James still has room. We can easily move it back to the art museum in a future year if we needed to, if Lynn's okay with it. And and like I said, the goal is to have, is really a traveling beautification that you can't pay for. Like, there's no way for Beaumont to buy this. This has to be something that now we're actually being known for kind of the best hospitality thanks to the CVB and to the City of Beaumont for providing artists with what they need. And we are 100% invitational. I want you guys to know that. This is not something that anybody can apply for. Like, my buddy who's an artist curator, he has a list of not just national but international artists who's on our list wanting to come to Beaumont and wanting to experience what Beaumont is. So we have plenty of artists, decent amount of real estate for now. And hopefully we can continue.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. No other discussion. The public hearing is now closed. Now is the time for any citizen who wishes to speak that has not spoken. They should have already registered with the kiosk. And
I don't have anybody, Mayor.
okay. Now as for council member comments, we will start over with Councilman Durio.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank a few folks. First, all the applicants, as you're going out the door, thank you for coming and apply. I'm guessing we're going to be able to help folks. Also, I guess a few months ago, Mr. Barkowiak called me because we were trying to get a grant for drainage funding for Phelps Road, and it was denied. And then he called me and said, do you have any folks in the neighborhood that have pictures? And so I said, yeah, including me. So I gathered up a bunch of pictures and sent them in to Mr. Barkowiak, and he sent them in, and the appeal for the denial was approved. Is that correct? So that was approved. So now we're gonna get that done. I want to thank you, Bart, and all the folks in the neighborhood that sent out pictures. That's the community got together and helped get that grant, and we got it. Thank Mr. Silas gone. Thank him for the legislative update. And let's see what else I have. Manager and Chris and for our your presentation, we sure appreciate it. I think we're heading in the right direction on that. And I believe, Mr. Manager, I really would appreciate if you could look into the next time we have a meeting with the school district on this sidewalk issue. But you know, I bring it up all the time. It's very important, not only to me, but to the whole community. And the kids it's all our responsibility. Their safety is all our responsibility. It's not just up to the school district or up to the city. It's everyone's responsibility. And I think that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Durio. Councilman Getz?
I saw something come across the city Facebook page about changing the way we are chlorinating our water. And I was wondering, Bart, if you could explain a little bit more about why we're going to free chlorine from chloramines and what that means to the citizens.
Yes, sir. We're temporarily switching over for the next 3 weeks over to free chlorine. So we're basically eliminating ammonia from the treatment process. This is a standard type of activity that's done throughout the state to address nitrification within the system. So if you use chloramines over a long period of time, and in particular, if you have another condition such as extremely hot weather, which we've had, you can get a bacteria growth within the system that feeds on that ammonia and it eats up that chlorine residual in the system. So we have to maintain the chlorine residual to keep the system safe and prevent bacteria harmful to humans from growing. So what the free chlorine does is it eliminates the food source for the bacteria and then kills that growth throughout the system. When we turn it back to chloramines in 3 weeks, then we'll have an easier time maintaining those chlorine residuals.
So as I understand it, and I struggled with organic chemistry in college. In fact, I changed my major after taking it.
I'm at my limit right there. That's it.
But as I understand it, that we're pumping more water out of the ground wells in Hardin County than we ordinarily do, and which may have more organic material in them. And so when we blend the water, ammonia acts as a food source for some.
Ammonia acts as a food source. It's not that the well water has more organic material in it. For some reason, we struggle more with the well water and the chlorine residuals. Something about it makes it particularly susceptible to the nitrification over and above the surface water. But it's not organic materials in it. It's something to do with the formation of those chloramines that it has more susceptibility to the nitrification, but that free chlorine will burn that out. So.
Well, I want to thank you and your staff and all the people that are in the water treatment facilities for staying on top of this and monitoring our water and noticing that, yes, we need to, put free chlorine in now because we want to maintain the viability and safety of our water supply. So thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to say is that, the Beaumont Labor Day tennis tournament, it starts this weekend, and we are up to about 300 registrants, which involve many people coming in from out of town that will be staying in our hotels. And it's a prize money tournament in the open division. So you have got some top caliber tennis to look forward. We're not going to be able to host it all at the Beaumont Municipal Tennis Center. There's too many people to get it done in 3 days. So we're going to be using Lamar as a secondary site. It's all free. Anybody that wants to go see really, really good tennis, not when I'm playing, but when the open division is playing, you're going to see some really good tennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Getz. Councilman Turner?
Since I've been on the council, this particular part that we went over today been one of the hardest parts for me to actually do. I wish we had enough money to give to everybody to do what they needed to do, but unfortunately, we have a budget and we have to make decisions based upon that budget. These organizations, I would say specifically museums, I just want to figure out a way to help them work better together. I think when they're competing for the same pot of money, you can kind of create a little tension sometimes, and I definitely want to see our museums thrive and work together. The next thing is, oh my God, Isaac Mouton, I promised I would give his aunt Gertrude Stuckley a happy birthday shout out. She turned 101 on Monday. So I seen her and I promised I would give her a shout out. She watches on TV still. And I like to compliment Chris and Kenneth on the strategic plan. We started on this for a while when I first got on council, and it's been going very well. I'm extremely impressed. I remember when I first got on the council, I asked our city manager in my first interview, is it a document I can look at to see what we have going on and what direction we're going in? Like, is it something in writing that I can go off of? And I was told the capital plan, and I was like, I don't think the capital plan is a particular strategic plan, but I just want to compliment you guys on the work you've done. And the whole council, it's not only been a few meetings, but we've even taken up Saturdays all day, putting together the strategic plan. So it's a lot of time that's went into it, and it was positive. And I know probably me and Chris may have asked for everything, but but I thank you for the time. And lastly, I kind of want to compliment June. We've been talking about TERS for a while, and to have it on executive session today, it means a lot, man. I just want to say thank you. You showed us more strategic ways to find revenue in the city of Beaumont, with parking fees, with the beautification fees, and you and Todd working together. I just want to let you know I appreciate y'all getting creative on more ways to bring revenue to Beaumont. So thank y'all, Todd and June.
Councilman Felshaw?
No comment, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Samuel?
No comment.
Councilman Neal?
No comment, Mayor.
City Attorney?
Hello. So first, I'd like to apologize because we did get the results back from our meeting time survey results at the last meeting.
Time's up.
But it was budget. So much going on. So I do want to thank Courtney with the Beaumont Enterprise for her gentle reminder. And we do have those results to share with council. Approximately 318 people participated in the survey. They were asked, have they attended a council meeting in the past 6 months? Would they like to attend a council meeting in the future? And what is their preferred time? And 1:30 was the overwhelming response, with about 50.6% people voting for that time. It's roughly 161 responses, so about 50.6, so about 51%. 34 people chose 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. was a second choice at 123 responses. So
that is what we have. If there is some next steps from council, happy to know that. This information is available to the public. If they,
I was just going to say, this part can be edited out.
well, it was close, Mayor. It was real close. Let's try again. I had a little bit more on the water system. Before I get into it, I did want to thank Councilman Durio for his and the public's assistance in our appeal. We got a huge volume of information, and I think that made the case a lot easier to the GLO to approve that appeal. I wanted to pass out, this just released today. It is from the Texas Water Development Board. They release it each week, and they go through drought conditions in the state of Texas. And as you'll be able to see when you get the handout, this is not normal for our part of Texas, but we are in extreme drought, which is the next to highest level of drought within the state of Texas. And if you look at the map of the United States that has the seasonal drought outlook, and you read through that, it states in there that they anticipate that these conditions will continue through the end of November. So they're not looking for a rainy forecast for us to get out of drought. I wanted to bring that to y'all's attention because we're currently in stage 1 voluntary restrictions. The public's done really, really well in helping us get our usage down. Saturday, we were at 33.2 million gallons. Sunday, we're at 33.7. But as we went into stage 1, we pumped another 3 million over that at 36.7 million gallons on Monday. So we continue to need the public's help on this. If we get up above 38 million gallons, then we'll, for 3 days, or 39 million gallons for a day, we'll go back into stage 2 again. And so we'd be back to mandatory restrictions. So with the public's help, we hope to stay in voluntary restrictions, but it does look from this forecast like we'll be there for an extended period of time. This is not going to be a quick fix, unfortunately. It doesn't look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, real quickly, Councilman Getz had brought up the mural brochure that was just released. The public can go to beaumontcvb.com, and that brochure, as well as some other information on the available arts in the area, is on that website. And then secondly, I handed out just an update as of the end of last week on the Beaumont dashboard. So,
thank you. City Manager.
A few things, Mayor. Mayor, I'd just like to congratulate City Council on the 2 things achieving today. One was the strategic plan that took a lot of work and a lot of time and commitment from you and staff. So thank you for your commitment and trusting the process and getting that done. So thank you. And likewise, the legislative agenda. You had a good legislative year. You actually got a bill passed. That's not easy in the state of Texas nowadays, especially not on your most recent try. So that's very successful. And as I was looking through the legislative agenda, we have a document that will take us through to the next session. We have our priorities already established. Whenever you're talking with elected officials, state officials, federal officials, you have a document to talk with them about what's important to Beaumont, because that's what they want to hear and what their staff wants to hear. So great. Likewise, I'd like to commend the citizens of the community for conserving water. We were really in, a bit of a dire situation at one time, and now we're back into stage 1. So that took the cooperation of this community to get there, and that's not always easy to do, because changing habits, especially people using water, is not easy, and it doesn't always happen that quickly. So I commend our citizens here. we have our departmental work status book. I just want to keep this on your mind because this is a great book. Whenever you have questions about something and you can't get us, look in this book. There's a ton of information about every department here, and it's updated every month. So it's a great resource book, and I just ask you to make sure and not forget about it and take a look at it when you get it. It comes up from Sandra Davis to you. And she sends it to you electronically every month.
She emails it every month. I read it, don't y'all?
And if you'd like a hard copy, we can supply hard copies. Yeah, it's every department with an update every month of what's happening currently. Thank you, Councilman Madurio, for reading it. And I have a couple other things, but that's all I have, Mayor. That's all I have to share.
Well, I just want to thank the council and our strategic plan. That was impressive. Also on the water, I'm just going to make a quick comment because I get several calls a day about water leaks that are continuing that have been happening for a long period of time. They repair based on the size of the pipe. So the larger pipes get water leaks get repaired quicker. So if you have a 1 or 2 inch line that needs repairing, that may be delayed, and we apologize for it because we understand, but we've even got a subcontractor working to help make the repairs. On homelessness, I've gotten several calls about that as well because of the heat. I did talk to Major Fagan, and I talk to him pretty regularly with the Salvation Army, but I confirmed today they're running below 40 and they have a capacity of 60. So they stay at about 60%. So they haven't had to turn anyone away from Salvation Army that is wanting to get out of the heat or spend the night. They can arrive at 5 o'clock and eat dinner, and they have to register between 6 and 7. And there is no charge for the Salvation Army. You'll sometimes hear that. There hadn't been one for 6 years. So there is no charge. People can stay as long as needed. And I like to remind people that Dr. Shannon Nile and I with BISD are visiting churches on Sundays, talking about how important volunteerism is in the school district. And if we're going to continue to make strides in helping our students and helping our youth, we need to volunteer. We have about 1,700. We need about 17,000, and certainly appreciate that's a number that we've come up with because it's about one for each student. So, and also all the different organizations that came and made presentations for the hot tax. We appreciate that. Now we're going to be recessed into executive session.